Welcome. My name is James Boland. I'm the founder and president of the Australian community. Tonight we're speaking with Zjantelle Cammisa Markel. Zjantelle is the principal of Cammisa Markel, a law firm based in New York City specializing in immigration. Zjantelle, welcome.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me again. It's been a couple of weeks, I think, since the last one, so we have a few updates to talk about tonight.
Zjantelle, perhaps we could start off with the consulates. A few of them are opening up. I understand there's some limited visas that they're approving.
So the consulates did say that they would start to open up. We did get word that it was going to be up to the country themselves and the conditions within the countries as to whether the consulates start to open. So we have seen some consulates keep appointments for F1 and J1 students, which were regular appointments, because I think they're prioritising, well, they have actually said that they're prioritising those at the moment. For our E3s, which is what I think the majority of our viewers are concerned about, and O1s and other visas, they've still been cancelling the regularly scheduled appointments. So right now, the only way to secure an appointment and keep it is if you're able to get an emergency appointment. If you can get an emergency appointment, those are not getting cancelled.
So, Zjantelle, what does it take to actually get an emergency appointment? What are the conditions? How do you apply for one?
Yeah. Okay, so what you have to do is you would need a compelling reason for an emergency appointment. And the reasons that the consulates consider to be more compelling are if you could show that it would cause severe financial hardship to the company that you're coming to work for, if you can't come to the US now, as opposed to when your regularly scheduled appointment is. The other thing they like to see is that your entry to the US now could provide a substantial economic benefit to the United States or to the recovery of COVID and towards the economic recovery of the United States from the effects of COVID. The other thing that they look at as well is if you have immediate relatives in the United States and you need to be reunited with those, that is also very compelling. So what we've been doing is we've been getting a letter from the employer that outlines the compelling reasons why, what would the financial loss be to this company if this employee can't get to the US now, immediately, right? Because the alternate is their regularly scheduled appointment, which they might have in October or November. We want the consulate to say, yes, we'll give them an appointment now. So they want to see what is the reason that we should grant an appointment now. Financial loss to the company, we try to quantify that in numbers because numbers look good. They can then measure that. The other thing is we like to emphasize that sometimes those numbers translate into the growth of the company in the US, which could lead to jobs to US citizens and US workers. They like that. And then if there is a family reason or a compelling reason like that, then we will outline that. And sometimes that alone can be enough, especially if you're separated from a spouse or your children. That can be a compelling enough reason for them to grant an emergency appointment pretty quickly.
So right now, there's obviously a lot of Australians who are interested in getting an emergency appointment in Australia. What are you seeing in terms of the availability of appointments?
So we were seeing emergency appointments being granted relatively quickly and a lot of them being granted as of up to about a week ago. And then in the last week, we have seen the consulates respond with a message saying, we are not approving the emergency request at this time. However, this does not mean that we're not going to approve your emergency request at all, but we're going to keep it on file. And if an opening opens up, we will reconsider this emergency request. So the good thing is that they're not saying completely no. But what it indicates to me is I think that what has happened is that people got wind of the emergency appointments. So a lot of people applied for emergency appointments. The reason why they were, I think that people were able to get them early on is because there weren't very many people applying for them. And the consulates, to be able to maintain social distancing rules and be safe during this time of COVID, they were able to grant them because they were getting fewer requests, so they could space them out throughout the day. But I think what's happened is so many people are requesting them that they can't accommodate enough appointments in a day to have them spread out enough and people not coming all at one time. Because you've got to consider that back before COVID, they would book up to 10 people in the same time slot and people would just be waiting. It would be, even though you had your appointment time, it would be pretty much a first come, first serve, because you would get there, check in. They did have multiple people booked for the same time slot, and then you would just wait because they had multiple windows. So you would just wait for your turn to go up. But they can't do that now. So now they can only accommodate far fewer appointments in a day. So I think that's what's happening. I think also because of, I think COVID numbers are going up in Australia right now. So I think that's also restricting the number of people that they want to let in as well throughout the day. So hopefully we will see them start granting those again in the near future. I think the difficult part about emergency appointments right now also is if you're not in the state, if you're not in Sydney or Melbourne or Perth, where there is a consulate, right now you can't even get to those states to be able to go do an emergency appointment because of the interstate travel restrictions that are in effect right now in Australia. In order of priority, I would say, if you're separated from your family, typically they will grant those first. And then secondly, senior business executives in a really important role, if they're going to be running an organisation and the organisation can't run without them in the US, that's a very compelling reason. Going on from there, if your role is not a senior executive role, I think then you've got a lesser of a chance of an emergency appointment. We are seeing emergency appointments being granted in Mexico right now, James. So, but if you're in Australia, that doesn't help you because getting to Mexico. But if you're in the US, that is good. So to book an emergency appointment, the procedure is that you need to book a regular appointment first and then try and get that emergency appointment moved up. So we were able to book regular appointments in Mexico City specifically, and then get those emergency appointment requests approved. But as of yesterday, we saw that Mexico City had no regular appointments available to book anymore to then be able to push that to an emergency appointment. So it's really a matter of just trying to find a consulate that you can get to with the current travel restrictions from the United States and then get back from as well. So Europe's not a great option because you can't get back from a Schengen country right now. So that's not a good place to request an emergency appointment unless you have a US citizen child or US citizen spouse in the US, because then you're exempt from the travel restrictions coming back from a Schengen country. That travel restriction is that if you've been in a Schengen country in the last 14 days, you cannot travel back directly to the United States. They have the ability to apply for a waiver of that, but you have to show that your reason is in the national interest of the United States. And we are seeing that they're not thinking anything's in the national interest of the United States. I know another immigration attorney that had a client in London that is managing basically a company that has over 2.8 billion in assets, and they said that's not in the national interest. Find somewhere you can get to and get back from, then book a regular appointment, and then see if you can get it moved up to an emergency appointment. So the loss that, what you're going to lose there is just the cost of booking the appointment if they don't grant the emergency, and you can move on and go to a different location.